I think from my point of view, I expected Bolton Wanderers to be in the mix for promotion last season, having reached the top six in the previous two playoff seasons in League One, having finished ninth the year before. It felt like they were on that steady progression. But I think the risk that they were taking under Ian Evatt was that because they had continually maintained a squad of primarily peak-aged and experienced player profiles, it meant that while the results said they were going on an incline and getting better, and it looked like they were close to finishing in the top two, what actually happened was a lot of players dropped off a level and they were missing that bit of fresh energy. And I think probably it was a consequence of short-term thinking, of maybe not investing in a little bit of youthful exuberance that could lift things a little bit. And certainly maybe Ian Evatt's management style, which shook the club up for a large period of his reign. Maybe it went a little bit stale towards the end. And certainly that was reflected in a lot of the performances last season. Talking of shaking things up, Steven Schumacher certainly did that initially with a winning run. I think it was 4 games on the spin at the beginning of his reign, but he wasn't able to sustain it. And now Bolton Wanderers face themselves kind of a hybrid situation this summer, where on the one hand, they do have to rebuild the squad a little bit and introduce some fresher, younger faces to rejuvenate the squad, but also bearing in mind that this is Bolton Wanderers in League One, and there is that expectation for them to be one of the top sides in the league, as arguably the biggest club in the division this season. So can Bolton Wanderers do that, and can they have both? And will they get promoted like Steven Schumacher achieved at Plymouth Argyle, winning the title in his last full season at this level with 102 points? That's the ambition for Bolton Wanderers. Will they do it? Plenty to discuss then in this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. If you like what we do here, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would really help us out. Delighted to be joined by Colin Yates from the Fanzone Podcast. Colin, thanks so much for joining me this evening. Ahead of
Pleasure.
Yeah, I suppose I've kind of titled this podcast as "We Got to Get Out of This Place," just because that's the energy that I'm feeling from you around our conversations around Bolton Wanderers. Is there almost a desperation for promotion from your point of view?
It's getting that way, isn't it? I think that, strangely or not, I think despite the fact that Shuey's obviously got this record of when he were in the division with Plymouth, there may very well be a kind of an expectation, but I think from the most part, I'm inclined to think that it's maybe not as high as it's been in certainly the last year or two, in terms of the expectancy. I think that a lot of fans probably should think that and should realise that there's a bit of a rebuild job going on here, and obviously if we can somehow strike that chord where it all clicks, then the kind of happy days, really. But I mean, I can only speak for myself. My expectancy isn't quite what it has been in the last couple of seasons, Gab.
Yeah, so where do you think Bolton Wanderers are at in terms of the operational side? How do you feel about the current ownership of Football Ventures and the work they've done in recent years? And do you hold them responsible for the failed promotion bids of recent seasons?
I hold them accountable to an extent from last season's shambles. I think there was a clear opportunity to accept a supposed resignation by Ian Evatt after the Huddersfield game, and for some bizarre reason, I think the decision was taken to allow him to continue, which obviously I think cost us getting in a new guy who could have potentially got us over the line. I mean, everything happens for a reason. I think at the time, when Huddersfield did beat us 4-0 at home, and Evatt did supposedly hand in his resignation, if they would have accepted that and moved on, Steven Schumacher was still in post at Stoke City, so we obviously wouldn't have got him in charge. So everything happens for a reason. I do think there's an element of blame's hard, but it was, I think, on reflection, they'll look back and think that's possibly could have been a bit of a mistake in obviously letting him continue in the role for as long as he did.
Bit of a shake-up in terms of the operational side this summer, Cole. Because Chris Markham has left the club after I think it's 5 years at the club, and is it Fergal Harkin who's come in as sporting director?
Yeah, from Standard Liège. I think that's a very shrewd appointment. Fergal Harkin contract was up for renewal at Standard Liège, and we kind of swooped in and offered him a package to essentially rebuild us off the fields. He's a very experienced guy. Obviously, he's worked at Standard Liège for I think about 4 years. Prior to that, he was with Manchester City for a good number of years. And he's been a shrewd operator from in the professional world in sports as well, with working at Nike for a long time. So he's got a hell of a CV, and I think it's a hell of an appointment at that level in this league. And I think it just shows kind of what the club still is in terms of a pull that you can get someone like that to come in and head up the operation of the football club. Because it's a really important position, obviously, and it's not something that we've had any real structure for a good while, as long as I can remember, actually, to be honest.
So, in terms of Stephen Schumacher, then obviously he wasn't quite able to sustain his impact in the way that he would have liked last season, but more than deserving of this opportunity to rebuild the squad, which was kind of the expectation anyway. What kind of connection has he built with the club and the fan base in his early days?
Yeah, I think in the most part, a perfect one, really. I think obviously the results themselves towards the end of last season weren't as we would have probably hoped, but that was through kind of no fault of his own, Gab, to be honest. It was a combination of reasons why we didn't succeed last season, and I think the departure of Aaron Collins is an example as to what that looked like in terms of the personnel that we had at our disposal, and what they offer from a mindset perspective. Hence why there are going to be one or two kind of surprises in terms of outgoings this summer, because I think that's important that he brings his guys in and they sing from his hymn sheet, which of course they weren't necessarily doing last season because they weren't his men, basically. So yeah, I think he's deserving of the opportunity. Of course he is, and I think he'll have a good. I think we'll have a good season. I'm just not as expectant as I probably have been and probably should be.
Is there almost a degree of apathy from your point of view, Carl, or is that the right word? Or
I think cautious optimism. So yeah, I think that's where I put myself. Like I'm always optimistic. I think that's me as individual, and I think most fans of Wanderers at this level should and always would be. But cautious optimism. I think. I'm sure we'll get into signings that we've made, and I'm sure we'll get into kind of the outgoings and the incomings and stuff, and what we can expect over the next month or so in terms of transfers and stuff. So it's pretty exciting. I think he's just bringing. If I'm honest, I think he's just going to bring men in, leaders, which is what's been missing. On top of the quality that we've got already in the squad, I think it could be a bit of a recipe for success. But I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Of course, yeah. Let's hope that's the case. I kind of agree with you about leaders needed, but I also think, Carl, that a bit of fresh legs is quite important, because I don't think that you've invested in players who can grow with the club very much over the last few years, because you've been quite outcome driven in the sense of very much about the bottom line, very much about winning, finishing in the top two and getting promoted. And it's kind of understandable in those circumstances that the development aspect will fall down the wayside. But then when you have a stable squad squad that stays together for a long period. If some players drop off and some players stay at the same level, you're probably going to decline incrementally, which is what we saw last season. Whereas if you have a stable squad, but you've also got some players that are growing and improving, then you might be able to improve. So I think you need a balance. I agree with you, maybe some leaders, but I also think you need some fresh legs who are really hungry and want to go and attack things.
Yeah, hungry and maybe have done it at a higher level, have got to a higher level and maybe not quite solidified themselves in the Championship for whatever reason. And I think a perfect example of that would be Javier, if that's the correct pronunciation, Simmons, that was signed for Hull. Obviously, I think he's like 22, I think he is, something along them lines. And we put him on a 4-year contract. So obviously, they really invested in him long term in terms of what he can offer. And yeah, maybe even a selling opportunity in the future for someone like that if he wants to push on with us. So they're going to do exactly what you've just said. I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks. I think, as I've said, we likely will see one or two so-called big names leave as we've done in Aaron Collins in recent days.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at the squad then. Goalkeeping position, you've got Hutchinson, who I imagine is either going to be third choice goalkeeper or go out on loan. You've got Luke Southwood under contract, who I think would be a fantastic deputy at this level. But I imagine he's going to compete with Teddy Sharman-Lowe, who you've signed on loan from Chelsea after a stint with promotion winning stint with Doncaster Rovers last season in League Two.
Yeah, I think that's it was a really important position, to be honest with you, Gab. I think obviously losing Nathan Baxter or not renewing any form of contract with him wasn't really much of a surprise. He looked like he kind of signed off a little bit towards the end of last season. He obviously has got his injury records as well. He was only on a 2-year contract, and I'm sure he would have known of interest from Watford, not only a club who's a division above us, but relatively local to where he's from down south as well. So maybe that was a contributor. But I think he was on good money as well, Gab, from what we understand. So, you know, when you sign a player from like Nathan Baxter from Chelsea, they're not going to be on a couple of quid, are they? So that'll have helped because that'll have saved, and we can invest them wages in other players. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the three. I don't really know a lot about Teddy Sharman-Lowe in honesty, but I hear from what I've read on Twitter and stuff, the Doncaster fans we're pretty happy with him. So that's good news, and I know he's in the 21s with England as well, which is obviously not a bad thing either.
Although I personally think that Doncaster have got the better end of the deal getting the lad from Hull, Timothy Lotatala. I think he might be the better goalkeeper than Teddy Sharman-Lowe, certainly on current ability. I think Sharman-Lowe's a high potential goalkeeper. I'm not quite sure whether he can deliver the consistency in League One required to fit for a side aspiring to the top two when he was good in League Two, but not necessarily unbelievable.
And I don't think he will be down as number one, Gab, to start the season off, to be honest. I think Luke Southwood's ample good enough to be a top keeper in this division. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with Luke. And maybe that's possibly the reason why everybody were pretty relaxed in losing Nathan Baxter and utilising the funds, like I said, elsewhere.
Absolutely. So again, I mean, we spoke about this off air, Cole. I've actually not got a clue what formation Stephen Schumacher will deploy. If we go to his previous career, I think as an assistant to Ryan Lowe, who always liked 3-5-2, and so in that sense, Schumacher's sides always played that, and then he carried that on when he replaced Lowe at Plymouth Argyle. But when he went to when they got promoted to the Championship, he flipped to a back four, and he does seem to have some formational flexibility. Do you have a preference, Carl, about maybe switching to a back four from a back three, which you've used under Ian Evatt for a while? Because if you're on the front foot in a lot of games, you could argue that 3 centre backs might be a bit excessive if it's not used correctly.
Yeah, I think when we're at home, and that was something that a lot of Wanderers fans often screamed out for when we were on top, in games to kind of go for the kill, so to speak, and win the game comfortably. Forward at the back, I'm pretty relaxed with. I think a lot of it would depend on the signings that we make to bring in to suit that as well. We've obviously brought in the lad from St Mirren, Richard Taylor, who can play. I think he's left-sided centre half, but also can play kind of a left back role as well. Rumoured to be in for is it Matty Jacob? Is it from Hull as well?
Yeah, he's a left back as well, isn't he, Jacob?
He's a left back as well. So I think the signings that we're making is building towards a 4 at the back, Gab, I think, in all honesty. Which just, you then have question marks over the midfielders and whether we're too stocked in that particular area as we stand.
You've got loads of midfielders. If I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 central midfielders, and only one at the moment. You've only got one wide forward I'd class as, and that's Carlos Mendes Gomez, who I've heard could be going somewhere in League Two, I think. So definitely wide forwards are needed, and certainly I wonder if there could be outgoings in terms of midfield. You would think that with that number of midfielders, it would be common sense to play a 3-man midfield, which would speak to possibly a 4-3-3.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm just looking at the squad, and I said it as the season ended last season. As much as Josh Sheehan's a wonderful footballer, I just something's telling me that I just can't see him being around for too long. I don't know why. I just think he's 30-year-old. He's still under contract. He's getting picked for Wales. He's certainly good enough to play in the Championship. If I was the Championship team, would I take a gamble on a player like that? Absolutely. Yeah. I just think there's an opportunity came in to cash in, given what we're discussing about the midfield options and the way that we're going to try and structure from in the wide areas and have a flat back 4 possibly. That pivot in midfielder doesn't really ring a great deal of sense to me. I'll probably upset a few Wanderers fans in saying that, but I potentially could see Josh, unfortunately, could be the next big name behind Aaron Collins leaving.
But again, if you retain him, you'd be delighted because he's a quality player.
Absolutely.
Influence games.
100%. It gives you that flexibility as well to play Josh in as that pivot, and kind of if you do want to go back to a back 5 in certain games, you can do, and kind of get him on the ball and play through the line, so to speak. But it's a difficult one. I don't think there was going to be. He's got flexibility in his formations, hasn't he, Schumacher, as you said already. Yeah. So we might need them options. I don't know.
I like that about Schumacher. I like the fact that in game, if something's not working, he'll go right. I'm going to do this, and we saw right at the start of his stint there were, I think, 4 games where you trailed and ended up winning, which shows a great ability to turn games around and have that agility from the sideline. So I think that's a really positive thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the right back spot, Cole, because I think Josh Cogley's going to suit playing as a right back rather than as a wing back, because you know how in an Ian Evatt 3-5-2 or whatever, he's the wing back, attacking wing backs. You've got to be amazing going forward and have so much quality. And I don't think Josh Cogley is that guy. But as a right back who's very athletic, who can get up and down, who can contribute going forward, but is also solid in those 1v1s defensively, I think that suits his skill set a lot more than playing as a super attacking wing back, which you need to be in an Evatt system in order to have any width.
Yeah, I do. I agree. However, I think that could be a position that we look to add competition for places. I'll be honest, because Cogley he's played an awful lot of football in the last couple of seasons, and I think he might need that kind of competition a little bit, not only for himself to get a rest, but also to kind of push him on as well, to keep him on top of his game. Because I think we're going to need them if we are going to play a flat back 4. The fullbacks are going to have to be very kind of robust and a traditional right back, as you say. But I think Cogley's got a lot to offer, absolutely, especially at this level still as a right back. I think he did lack going forward.
Yeah, but I think he'll look a bit better going forward as a kind of supporting behind a wide forward rather than when you're the wing back. It's the sole focus on you to kind of really force the issue.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think for right back, you want to be recruiting a sort of young understudy who might start 5 to 10 league games this season and take a bit of heat off Josh Cogley when he needs a rest or might be injured or whatever, but is ready to maybe go up another level the following season. So I would be looking at somebody in the kind of 18 to 23 sort of age bracket.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. Because obviously we know that Cogley can offer a lot, and he's fit. He's fit, and he's got a good record in that respect. And a little bit of fresh blood behind him would help, and maybe help that player come on as well. Because obviously Costa's got a lot of experience, hasn't he? And that counts for a lot. When you're dealing with young players.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be good one for a Premier League youth pickup or of some kind. That sort of position.
Someone like Conor Bradley. Is that what you say? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, Conor Bradley.
I wonder if he fancies coming back.
You never know. So central defence, Cole. You've got 4 options vying for what we think will be 2 positions, or it might be 3. In George Johnston, who we know before injury was a very important player to Bolton Wanderers, Will Forrester, Richard Taylor, the left-footed centre-half you mentioned, and Chris Farino. Do you have a preference in terms of the centre-half pairing from those 4?
Did you mention Owen Toll?
Yes, I had him actually listed as a right-back option, but he'd be very different profile, wouldn't he, to Cogley? So
yeah, right side of centre-half, Toll all day long.
But could he play right centre-half in a 4, do you think, Toll? Is he big enough and strong enough?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He had a very stop-start season last season, I think just through pure burnout, but he is definitely our best centre-half, in my opinion.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm surprised about that.
Okay. 100%, definitely. Right. Listen, that's no disrespect to Will, to Will Forrester and Jono and Farino and everybody else. But I think if you're sat in a room and they're all sat down together, they'd probably all agree that Tolley was the better centre half. To answer your question, my preferred 2 would be in a 4. In a 4, it'd be Toll and difficult. This really. See, Tolley played left of the 3 before in a 5.
And he's right-footed, isn't he, Cole?
Yeah, but he's pretty comfortable in that slot as well when he's fit. It's really hard because it's hard because obviously I don't really know a lot about the lad that we've just signed for St Mirren. I
wasn't able to do too much digging on him, so I'm not entirely sure.
But I think I've seen. So I mean, listen, everybody looks good on YouTube, don't they? But I saw some bits and reading what the St Mirren's fans were saying about him. He looks like a hell of a centre half. I think he reminds me like a Rico, but on the left side, but more a footballer. If that's harsh, I don't know.
That's encouraging. Yeah. So, okay, so that's quite interesting competition because we know what George Johnston can do because there was one season, I can't remember whether it was 23-24, where it was like one of the arguments as to why Bolton missed out on automatic promotion was George Johnston getting injured. So that's how important he can be. It's just whether, I guess, Cole, you think he can get back up to those levels?
Possibly. Again, maybe he could be a player that we could sell on, possibly, as George Johnson, because he's part of that old guard now under Everett. He's got Everett's tenure, and I feel like, I don't know, since he came back from that cruise ship, he's not quite been the same player, Gab.
Right.
And I think you're looking at it from the outside looking in, which is obviously totally to be understood. But when you watch it week in, week out, he doesn't quite seem as he was.
That's why I've got you on, Cole.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is just my opinion. Some Bolton fans might be agreeing with this now as we're watching this, or disagreeing. Obviously, I don't know, but he doesn't. Again, if an opportunity, if an offer came in for him, would I consider it? If I was the boss, possibly, yeah. But But as Davies just said as well, Chris Farino, he looked great last season, and there's no denying that he could be. I see him more of a centre of a 5 though, Farino. I don't know why. I worry that if he was in the wide areas, caught one-on-one, he'd struggle a little bit in a 4. Do you get what I mean? Which is why I'm more. I can see Farino. If we do play a 5, he could be the centre of the 3 in the middle. Although David is right, he's very good centre half. I must admit. You'll know better than me actually. When he was at Wycombe, Farino, did he play in a 4 or a 5?
I think he played in a 4. Yeah, he played alongside. Was it Anthony Stewart? He played alongside. I think.
Right. So maybe I've just contradicted myself. Then obviously, I don't know like what.
But in fairness, Cole, Wycombe play a different style to what Bolton might be, because that was under. I think that was the Gareth Ainsworth.
It was, yeah.
So
the expectancy is different, isn't it, under a Gareth Ainsworth's team in terms of the way they play, I guess.
Well, but also it's partly style, but it's also your fullbacks tend to tuck in. So if he was right side at Wycombe, he would have had Jack Brimmer to his right, who was quite very good at the recoveries and did a lot of the 1v1 stuff. So maybe that mitigates it a little bit. Yeah,
but there's options. There's plenty of options, Gab.
Yeah, that's what's clear, because Will Forrester as well. Where would you sort of put him in the reckoning?
Fantastic defender. He proved towards it before he got injured last season. Again, that's his problem. He's got a bad injury record. He needs to sort that out as best you can. Maybe that's something he'll be looking at in the summer, possibly. Yeah, training regimes, diets, all the usual stuff that they look at when they're picking up injuries. But there's no doubt in terms of a defender, his leap, he reads the game very well. He's got a great heading ability. Positionally, he's great. He's a good centre half, really good. Really good.
Well, I think what we can agree on then, Carl, even if we can't quite settle on a best pairing at this stage because there's so many unknowns, is brilliant to have 5 good first-team competent centre-halves. Whereas, like I mentioned 2 seasons ago, George Johnston gets injured and it massively wrecks the whole season. Yeah. I think one thing we could be able to say is maybe that's not going to happen this time because you've got good options. So that I think is a real positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether there are any more incomings and outgoings in the defensive structure as well.
There might be an outgoing.
Yeah, don't be surprised if one leaves. Possibly may bring somebody else in. But certainly the right back spot, like you said, definitely an area that we look at.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that you could be signing Matty Jacob from Hull, because the 2 players I've got down as options at left back are Georgie Osai Tutu and Spolik Schön, who I would say are more like specialist wing backs. And I guess the downside of switching to a back 4 is why I think it would suit somebody like Josh Cogley. I would maybe question whether it would suit somebody like Osai Tutu or Schön, because they're more attack-minded players. So I think you would probably need to recruit a specialist left back.
Yeah, and this is where I see an issue, because I think the 2 mentioned players there aren't really fullbacks, if I'm honest, Gab. Defensively, there's a lot of questions over them. Maybe less so Jordi Tutu, possibly, but certainly Shonny, I think defensively he doesn't quite look. I mean, it was his first season in England last season. It might be a bit harsh, this to be fair. He's only a young lad, but I don't see him as a left back. I see him more of a winger. Again, he could be another one that they move on. I'll be honest. He's a good. He did well last season for his first season. I don't see him as a left back. I see him as a wing back. I don't see him as a winger because his final output isn't good enough.
Right.
In that final third, he let himself down on several occasions last season. So again, he could be another one, Shonny. That again, if an offer comes in, if we can make money on him compared to what we bought him, I think with 900 grand, 800, 900 grand last summer, that could be something they're looking at. I don't know. The fullback areas are a concern. I think we've got Max Conway, who's just come back from a really good season at Crewe.
Yes, he's had a brilliant season at Crewe. Yeah, he'd certainly be an option there.
I think.
Although again, I think he played the wing back. I think.
Yeah, he did. I think he did, but I think he is left. He's competent, I think, as a left back as well. I think Schumacher said that he's got to essentially prove himself. And if he has a good pre-season, he might have a chance.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, though, Cole. I like the fact that there's somebody coming in there who's got a bit of a hunger to go out and prove themselves in
He's an academy lad. He's an academy lad as well, and he came from academy, exactly. So that's going to open it.
And I like having that flow or influx of players from the academy into the first team, because I think it can rejuvenate a whole club.
Absolutely.
Right then, Cole, onto the minefield that is central midfield. You might need to take a deep breath before this. I'm going to start with Aaron Morley, because it seems like he's had a brilliant 22-23 season where he was one of the best midfielders in the division. Or was it the year before? I can't quite. It was one of the 2 seasons. I think it might have been 22-23 because it might have been at Rochdale the year before.
I think you've been a huge fan of him for a long time, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really surprise me that you're getting confused over when he were playing well and when he might not have been perfect. I loved him at Rochdale because you could see the finesse on the ball and and then I think at 22-23 season he started to add become a bit more well-rounded for Bolton. But then 23-24, he had this kind of drop-off. But then 24-25, by that loan spell at Wickham, he kind of picked up again. And so, do you see Aaron Morley becoming a mainstay in the team this season? First player on the team sheet, Gab.
Right.
I think he's the one that they build around, or they will be building around in this kind of a spine of the team, really. Obviously, he's versatile as well in terms of, he can play off the right and he can play more central. I just think he's everything you want, I think, as a midfielder at this level. And the little transfer to Wickham, won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but the reason why that happened is no longer with the club. So I think I'll be surprised if he moves on, unless a crazy offer kind of comes in, for him from above, possibly. Who knows? Someone take a gamble from the Championship, maybe. But again, I can't really see that. I don't see him moving back to Wickham personally. I'd be very surprised if that happens. So, he would be the man that I would build the team around personally.
Lovely. So that's clarity from the starting point. So that narrows it down to just the 7 other midfielders.
Have you got on that list, Gab?
So I've got Josh Sheehan. I've got Joel Randall, because he played as a 10 at one for Peterborough, although he can play wide. I've got Sharples Ahmed, who's come through the academy. I've got Xavier Simons, who you mentioned earlier. I've got Thomason. I've got Clady Loloth, and I've got Carl Dempsey.
Right, Dempsey's injured until October, so you can write him off.
For initially, okay, fine.
Yeah, I'll be honest though, I'd be surprised if he came back as he was, even from, I think he's only got, I think it's his last year of his contract. He's out till October. He is a bit of a warrior. He's a fighter, so maybe he proves me wrong on that. And I hope to God he does, because he's such a talented footballer. But he's out till October, I think, so that's crossed him off. Lolos will be, I'll drive him to wherever he wants to go. Personally, he'll be going. Sharples Ahmed, I think he'll probably go out on loan. He has come through the academy. He had a bit of a stint when we had all them injuries towards the back end of last season. I think he showed little glimpses, but I think he needs a Max Conway loan.
Right.
Yeah.
You think he'll get suited? He'll get offers in League Two.
I think he's good enough. Yeah. Although he's a bit of a. He's tall, very slight. Is he robust enough for League Two? I don't know, but he needs a loan. Wherever that loan is, he needs a loan, I think. How would you describe? Would you try him as a deep line playmaker, or? I'd say so. Yeah, like a Sheehan, really, in that respect.
Okay, so a loan possibly for Sharples Ahmed. Lolos, you'd be looking to offload. Dempsey, very much on the back burner for now. So that kind of narrows it down to Sheehan, who we think there may be interest in.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, Gab. Don't say that, because I'm not. I'm not saying that. I've not heard anything or anything. It's only my opinion. I don't see how it necessarily fits in certain situations, Sheehan.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, if it's
And I just think
because
because he's 30, obviously coming to it, I think he's got 2 years left to his contract. Playing for Wales, Bellamy's picking him all the time.
Yeah,
he needs to be playing higher, doesn't he? For international recognition as much as anything else.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
I mean, I think until an offer comes in, Bolton Wanderers have got to. They can't be thinking, "Oh no, you have Josh Sheehan," because it's like, no, he's a great player. You're paying his
Absolutely, I'm
wages.
not.
He agreed to sign the contract. So while he's at Bolton Wanderers, you plan to have good players at Bolton Wanderers.
Yeah.
So I guess. So are we looking at Stephens, Sheehan, and Morley as a possible midfield trio if Sheehan stays?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like they're the more central three midfielders, aren't they? I see someone being added to that as well. We've got you might say too many number 10s. Obviously, Lolos will go. I think Joe Randall they could flourish this season. I think potentially if we build a team around him in that final third.
What I would say, Carl, is if it's Sheehan, Siemens, and Morley as the midfield trio, lots of quality, lots of creativity, lots of control. I think you're going to have to be very good at pressing from the front if you play with those three in midfield, because I don't think that you've got loads of physicality or possibly tenacity in some respects. So I think the engagement would have to come from possibly a front three. If you play with wide forwards, you'd have to be very good at forcing oppositions into misplaced passes and clearances that allow Sheehan, Siemens, and Morley to get on the ball and control and dictate. Yeah. Because if the battles are happening in midfield, there's a danger that they might not have that more destructive element. So that's just one thing that I'd be careful about in terms of planning the best 11.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Personnel, as good as it looks on paper, I think there's going to be movement all over the place, I think, with our squad before the start of the season.
One thing I do like is tying that, like we sort of touched on at the top, tying Xavier Siemens onto a long-term 4-year contract. You mentioned
4 years, yeah.
I love that kind of squad building over a long-term period. I like that the club is pivoting in that direction and thinking about the long term. I'm not saying it hadn't been done before, but maybe not to this extent. So I like that kind of investment is you're not just looking at loans who can fix for now. You're looking at big assets that can really grow with the club. So yeah, I'm very encouraged by that.
But I also think possibly the reason why that's maybe been done is to give the player more security as well. I'm sure that he would have likely had offers from, maybe one or two of the promoted League One teams from last season, and there might be a 2 or 3 year contract and offer somewhere else, and kind of that gives them that protection as well, doesn't it? But also allows them to understand that they'd be entrusted to grow at the club as well. So there's a mixture of the two, really. I think a similar thing, we'll get onto the forwards in a minute, but I think a similar thing's probably happened with the signing of Sam Dalby as well. But I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute.
Well, let's touch on the signing of Sam Dalby then. What do you think was key to the club's decision to recruit Dalby?
The distinct lack of grit in our front line and fight, and anybody who can do anything with his back to goal, and give us an option, I think is what we've been crying out for a good while. He tried doing it a little bit with McAtee and Collins last season, playing into the channels a little bit and playing them with the back to goals, and they obviously don't have the real minerals to play that way. So getting a focal point, and also maybe a player that John McAtee can flourish under as well. I think when you remember when he was at Barnsley, he played alongside what's the big fella called, blonde hair, who were at Stockport last season on loan from Barnsley.
Barnsley, who's John McAtee? What season roughly are we on about?
This is the one when McAtee was there. what's he called? The blonde fella. Is it something with an eye? My mind's gone blank. Help me out here, Gav.
What's Barnsley? Striker. So it's a striker for Barnsley with blonde hair.
Yeah, light coloured eye. Tall
So it
lad.
was two seasons ago. So they had 23, 24. I'm trying to get confused. They got
anyway.
We'll revisit that one. Okay.
Yeah, the name will come to me, but McAtee played up top with the big lad at Barnsley when he was there and played pretty well. I think when he were at Barnsley that season, I think McAtee got maybe 12, 13 goals, 14 goals up front with the big lad. And maybe that gives us the options to get the better out of McAtee as well, hopefully. But yeah, I think that's the logic behind the signing of Dalby. But also, I mean, crying out loud, what did he score 15 goals Dundee last season in the SPL and got into the team of the season. And, you know, a player who's clearly shown that if he gets a run in the team, he'll score goals. So I think Dundee would have had him back in a heartbeat, wouldn't they? So that's a positive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully Delby can provide some of that physicality. You've still got Victor Adebayo, but it feels like his best work at Bolton Wanderers is probably 2 or 3 seasons ago now. And so I'm wondering if he's going to be onto the periphery this season.
Yeah, he's injured until November as well. So he did his cruciate last season, so he'll be out for a while. It was Sam Cosgrove, by the way, the fellow.
Oh yeah, I should have. Yeah. Anyway, there you go.
But Adebayo's there's a number. I'd be very surprised if I think it'll probably be is his contract up end of the season? Might be actually, and if it is, I don't know. Maybe they sell him for cheap in January, or if it's not, they'll loan him out. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think he'll cut it anymore.
Yeah,
because all these positions we're talking about, Gav, they're all going to get added to as well, aren't they? You know, be that in the summer or be that in January.
Well, the big thing that stands out to me, Cole, is if you do play with wide forwards, then I mean maybe McAtee might be able to play one of those wide forward roles. But I'm wondering if somebody like an Osai Tutu possibly could. But I think you're probably going to need to recruit those positions if you.
Nice segue into you'll have to excuse the pronunciation, but Salford's winger Kelly and Mai.
Kelly and Mai, yeah, I really like Kelly and Mai. He's a very quick, agile, wide player who loves to, with a great work ethic, loves to kind of produce moments of skill out wide and take on his fullback. And then he can get in some really dangerous areas as well, and isn't shy to have a shot at goal. So I think on that.
So sorry to interject, Gav. No, given I'm sure there's Bolton fans watching, and for their benefit, if this signing does materialise, given what we've just been talking about and the way that we can envision Shuey setting up for this season, and your knowledge of course, Salford City and League Two, can you see him fitting into this team and this club? More importantly,
so it depends on formation. Club, yes, I think he's a really exciting asset, and I think he's somebody who, while I'm not going to say definitively yes, he's absolutely going to be the star player that ensures you get into the top 2 this season, I do like the signing from a point of view of long-term investment and players like I spoke about at the top, like with Xavier Simmons, somebody who can grow with the club. Hopefully you've got him onto a long-term contract. Formation wise, he has been playing left wing back for Salford City, but I would see him as naturally a wide forward who needs that freedom to kind of cut inside and get into those dangerous areas, and I think he can do that really well. So he's a little bundle of energy, very skillful, and I think he'll get the fans off their feet if nothing else.
Yeah, I think if a player like that signs for a club like this with the fans behind them, and if he's made to feel $1 million, then you know the ability levels go up 1 or 2 notches, don't they? So yeah, on the face of it, it seems like a pretty good potential signing, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think so. It certainly is as a long-term investment. So Yeah, I think maybe another one in terms of a right. Again, I've kind of mapped this squad out as a 4-3-3, but I don't actually know whether that's the way that Shuey will go. So again, we're kind of guessing a bit on that front. So, in terms of additions, I would kind of guess loosely that if we're looking at back four, I think Cole, and stop me wherever you disagree or want to add something. I'm just going to kind of look at where you need to strengthen. I think you need set for goalkeepers because you got 3 of them. I think you need an understudy to Josh Cogley. I think you are well set for centre halves with 5 competitive first team options for now. I think that you need a left back, but it looks like Matty Jacob could be that one. I don't think you need any midfielders in terms of numbers, although you may need one more destructive athletic type in there, depending on how many are offloaded. So a possible ×1 there. And I will say within that's one left-sided forward and one, I think possibly a right-sided forward if you want to play a front 3. So by my calculations, Cole, I think as the squad stands right now, I think you need 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 4 to 5 additions between now and the end of the window. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, so I calculated 5 in my mind. So yeah, we're on the same wavelength. My only concern would possibly be another or a lack of kind of a number 9 behind Sam Dalby. Because obviously we lost Dion in January. We've lost Aaron Collins a couple of days ago. Obviously we've got McAtee. We signed, in my mind, Dalby's replacing Dion as a central forward. So that therefore means that we've still got a space to fill in that number 9 spot. And for me personally, I'd like for us to go with a bit of experience up top, possibly. Someone who's, we got linked to. I don't know how accurate it was. I think it was more on the Preston side, but Will Keane a few weeks back. Someone like that who's seen it, done it. A bit older. Will obviously give us a little bit of experience behind Dalby would be my
won the title at this level as well. Won the title at this level as well under Liam Richardson in 21-22 was one of their most players that season. So
someone like that who's got that experience and a similar thing for the right wing position as well. I don't know how true this is, but I saw that is it Barkhuizen, the right winger at Derby?
Tom Barkhuizen, yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't. He's not the kind of signing that would. I'm much more into the signing like Kelly in May. I think, Cole, if you're signing somebody of Tom Barkhuizen's sort of age profile, they need to be someone that you're really confident massively improves the best 11. And if you're not confident about that, you want to be signing in May who can grow with the club and be that long-term investment. Because otherwise, I think signing experienced backup is kind of how you end up with a lot of clutter and end up needing a rebuild. So you want, if you're going peak age or experienced players, they need to really improve the best 11, in my opinion.
I think I've just been screaming out for experience that have got promotions before out of this division. That's what I'm keen for. But also players who have played in the Championship who still have that desire to get back there as well. That's another thing. In my mind, that's what I want to see. As much of, maybe even more, as investing for the future.
Okay.
But that's only me. Sense. That's only me.
Sure.
Because I just want to get out of the division.
Well,
I don't want to... You know what I mean? I don't want to necessarily plan... Listen, signing Kelly Amai and, signing Xavi Simons in midfield on decent contracts who are young is great. And I'm sure that them 2 players could, even in the future, play in the Championship consistently. But I want to deal with the here and now at the moment. And I think signing a few experience will help that.
But I would argue, Cole, that going down the dealing with the here and now approach is actually what's got you into this position in the first place. Because you've
How's it
I think so, because you've focused on the short-termism, Cole. And you've said, let's go with an experienced and peak age group and let's keep them together for a long period. And then because you don't have players that are improving,
But
there's a stagnation that we saw last season.
who are you talking about? Who are you putting in that category, Gab? What players or former? No, former players, I presume, that you put in that category.
Well, I would say if we look at the squad that Bolton have had since they were promoted to from League Two, I would struggle to name any young players that have improved with the club in that time, because the club hasn't put enough emphasis on the developmental aspect.
Yeah, but the players that have solidified us back in this division are obviously we're League Two players that just managed to be able to make that jump, like Geth and Rico and whatnot. So I see your point. To be fair, there hasn't really been a great. I'm thinking Morley is probably the only one really in recent years that was of an age where you'd say that you're investing for the future type of thing, like you just said.
I mean, I think there's got to be a balance, Cole. I think that's where we can agree, because I agree with you that I think you've got to recruit relative to the expectations of the fan base, because Bolton Wanderers can't just say, no, we've got this 5-year plan and we're going to sign all these developmental players, because it's an expectant fan base and you're going to completely, you're going to rub them up the wrong way if you just go down this sort of developmental path. But I think there needs to be a balance. I think there needs to be some investment in players that you think can grow with the club in that sort of early 20s bracket where they're just about to hit their peak. And I think there needs to be, 1 or 2 signings of experience who you're confident can really move the needle right now. But I think there needs to be some focus on that growth element as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're agreeing. We are agreeing, but just in...
We're sort of agreeing, but on different ends of the agreement.
Yeah.
Right. So, Cole, expectations for the season. What I'd love to ask you is, are you hoping for the top 2 and setting top 6 as a minimum expectation, or are you hoping for the title and setting top 2 as the minimum expectation?
I'm hoping for the title, but the top 6 is a minimum expectation.
Okay. So
I just see no reason why, providing that we get the signings right, that we can push on and win it. But at the same time, this is a rebuilding job, so it's not going to be easy. I think there's going to be an element of patience needed, because I think, like any football club these days, especially due to social media, when you lose a game, it's like the whole world's going to end. So there has to be a little bit of patience, because obviously players are going to need a little bit of time to gel. But I don't see any standouts, Gab, for that title this season from what I've seen so far. So we should be in the mix for it.
With parachute payments in League One, Premier League parachute payments in
League
One.
But that you're referring to Luton there, but I think that it's clear that a lot of the money that they got from the Premier League is going straight into that new ground that they've got being built or going to be getting built. That's where their money's going. It's clear as a day is long, because I don't know whether you've ever been to Kenilworth Road, but it's absolutely horrific.
Oh God! Trying to get any leg room at Kenilworth for a daddy long legs like me, it's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's just an awful setup in it. So you can't blame them for looking to invest all their money into that new ground. So I'm not. Listen, they're going to be a force, because, like you've just said, they were playing the Premier a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, they'll lose some players as well, won't they? And
sure,
yeah, I think I'm not concerned about Luton, to be honest with you. I think they'll be up there, of course they are. But there's no standouts. Do you know what I mean? Like your lot last season, we were a clear standout.
Yeah, there isn't that this year. I agree.
There isn't that this. I think it's there to be got at. It's just the signings need to be right. But again, I've said it at the beginning. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm nowhere near as expectant as optimistic as I have been in previous years.
Well, that's certainly encouraging to hear. As you know, Carl, I'm releasing my 1 to 24 predictions in late July. And one of my processes for that this year is rating each club out of 10 on 14 different categories that I think are going to determine their fate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw you each of the categories, and you can give me a number between 1 and 10. How's that sound?
Oh, this is exciting. Yeah, go on. Nice. I wasn't expecting this.
First category, ownership.
Between 1 and 10, did you say? Yeah,
10 being the highest. Yeah.
8.
8 for ownership, Carol, for Sharon Britton and co.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a core in that. It's not just Sharon.
Of course,
by any stretch, yeah.
Infrastructure.
At this level, 10.
10 for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Playing budget.
I think we're around the 8 or 9 bracket.
Should we go with a 9?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Management. Stephen Schumacher won the League One title at this level in 22-23 with Plymouth Argyle.
You see, that is where a lot of the investment has gone in this summer in Fergal Harkin and the recruitment team that, certainly one of the recruitment guys that they had at Plymouth. I can't remember the gentleman's name. He had him at Bury as well.
Jimmy Dickinson.
He's come in. Fergal's come in. Shuey's obviously just come in. He's got a new goalkeeping head of goalkeeper, whatever the hell that position's supposed to be. There's been a lot. Yeah, I've seen that a couple of. That's not just us. I've seen a few clubs saying head of goalkeeper. I think it must be some kind of new walk kind of saying. I don't know.
It's a bit more posh than saying goalkeeping coach, isn't it?
Head of goalkeeping. But anyway, there's been a lot of money, I think, invested in the infrastructure of the management team. So I'm going to put that as a 9. That's a good. That on the face of it, that seems like a good setup.
9 for management. Goalkeeping department.
Question marks over the lad we got from Chelsea just because obviously he's young. Having said that, we also signed a young goalkeeper from Man City a couple of seasons back, and now he's just about to sign a multi-million-pound deal for Newcastle in James Trafford. So, yeah, you know what I'm trying to get at that with that one. But having said that, it could be better, I think, to be honest. I think it's a really important position. I'll probably say around 6 at this stage.
6 for the goalkeeping unit. Defence.
A lot of options, isn't there? Don't really know a lot about the lad we just signed from St Mirren, but he does look decent. I'm pretty happy with that. I'd probably say about a 7.
7 for defence, probably higher with a left back.
Yeah, that's fair to say. And another right back to compete, like we've just discussed earlier.
With Josh Cogley. Midfield.
Yeah, this is strong for this level. 8, but could be a 9 if they signed somebody more combative.
Nice. So an 8 pending, possibly a 9 for the midfield. Attack. If we're including the whole front line, I'd suggest it's probably not as strong as the midfield.
Nowhere near, no. And that's what two wide players. We've got 2 wing backs at the moment, potentially played as wingers in Sean and Osatutu. We're lacking another centre forward, as we've discussed. 6.
6 out of 10 for the attack. Depth relative to this stage of the window.
Oh, I think relative to this stage of the window, I'd probably give it a 7. There's no real complaints there. I think they've hit the ground running pretty well, to be honest.
Squad stability.
Elaborate on that.
So kind of a group that's been together for a while and has a certain synergy and understanding.
Yeah, low. I think certainly by the time the season starts, it's going to be low because I think there's going to be players going and coming in. I'd say around 6, 5, even or 5 actually. Go 5.
5 for squad stability. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Growth potential.
Growth potential. What? How far can this squad grow together?
I think so. So I typically refer to young players who you think are going to be a lot better this season in contrast with last season, which is kind of part of how you'd kind of project improvement.
We've not really got a lot of. I mean, we had a few players towards the end of last season, and they will push on if they get the chance to. 5.
5 for growth
Yeah.
potential. Team spirit.
Well, few of the players have lost the best mate in Aaron Collins, haven't they? the low sock brigade. Bolton fans will know what I mean by that. I don't know, 5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
Fitness.
like I said, it needs some men in. It needs some leaders to get them. You know what I mean? Get them going.
Get them up. Yeah,
Yeah. What was the
Fitness.
next? What fitness? Well, low 4.
Last season that was certainly
last season. Towards the end of last season, they were dropping like flies. So that tells me either mentally the weak or physically the weak. They've either, excuse my French, tossed it off, so they didn't fancy it, so they were crying off, or they were physically weak and they were too injury prone. But I think that's something that it's going to address.
Yeah, I would expect Stephen Schumacher to address. So we'll say 4 for now, but we're also confident that it's going to go up to a 6 or a 7, I guess.
Yeah, you'd hope so with the signings.
You'd hope so. And final one, quality.
Thing is, with all due respect to a lot of the teams in this division, the quality is it's decent. You know, it's good. But
David's gone with a 9.
For quality, I don't agree with that, David. I'd say 7.5. Can I have half? Something like halves? No.
I'll give you a half, yeah.
7.5. They could, but with the right signings and the way that they could potentially gel, like I said before, you know, we've said, you know, McAtee played well off Cosgrove. We signed a lad with good back to goal. Maybe that'll get the best out of him. You know, it could be better, but again, it's on the signings, isn't it?
Certainly is. So some final quick-fire questions from me then, Cole, just to finish things off. What's the biggest reason to believe in Bolton Wanderers right now?
Stephen Schumacher.
We're putting our faith in you, Stephen. Biggest reason for doubt?
Expectation.
And too early for a prediction. Give me a feel of the direction you think next season's going to go in, roughly.
Scrapping for top 2, and we'll just about do it.
Well, there you have it. Got a prediction from Colin Yates of the Fanzone Podcast
on the 21st of June. That counts, really.
It's very early. Maybe an unofficial prediction. I'm sure you'll go
unofficial
with an
prediction,
one later in the summer. Colin, thank you so much for joining us. Love your stuff, and the folks on the Fanzone Podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you watching at home as well. If you like what we do here, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. That would really help us out. And we'll see you again for another summer deep dive very soon.